The autumn twilight painted the orchard in shades of amber and deep purple, casting long shadows between the gnarled apple trees. Harold Mitchell's weathered hands moved slowly, gathering the last of the season's fallen apples into a well-worn wicker basket. At 72, he moved with the deliberate care of a man who had learned patience was a virtue, each movement calculated and precise. A strange sound broke the evening's quiet, a sound that didn't belong to any creature he knew. It was more mechanical than organic, yet carried a hint of something alive. A soft, almost musical ping echoed between the trees, followed by a whisper of displaced air that made the leaves tremble. Harold paused, his hearing aid picking up the faintest trace of something unusual. Years of solitude had sharpened his senses rather than dulling them. He set down the basket, its wooden handle smooth from decades of use, and listened intently. The sound came again, a delicate, almost sorrowful tone that seemed to vibrate with pain and desperation. Curiosity overcame caution. Harold grabbed the walking stick he carved from an old oak branch years ago, its handle polished by countless hands and years of use. The stick had been his companion through many adventures, from his days as a botanical researcher to his years of quiet retirement. Tonight, it would be more than just a walking aid. The old barn loomed ahead, its red paint faded to a soft rust color, telling stories of decades of weathering. Harold approached carefully, each step measured and deliberate. The evening air carried a strange coolness, almost metallic, that made the hair on his arms stand on end. Something moved in the shadows. At first, Harold thought it was a trick of the light, the way sunset could play strange games with perception. But then he saw it clearly. A small, huddled form pressed against the barn's weathered foundation. It wasn't an animal, at least not any animal he recognized. The shape was too deliberate, too carefully positioned to be random. As he drew closer, the details became more apparent. The form was roughly the size of a young child, but its outline defied natural description. Skin, if it could be called skin, shifted and shimmered like living light, changing colors with each subtle movement. Translucent patches revealed glimpses of an internal structure that looked more like intricate circuitry than biological tissue. The creature was breathing, but not in any way Harold had ever seen before. Each breath created tiny crystalline formations that hung in the air for a moment before dissolving, like fragile glass butterflies emerging and disappearing in an instant. "Hello." Harold's voice was soft, the same tone he used to coax rare orchids into blooming during his years of botanical research. The being didn't react with fear or aggression. Instead, it seemed too weak to do anything but exist. A sound emerged, not quite a whimper, not quite a communication, but something in between. It was a sound of pure, absolute exhaustion. Harold knelt down, ignoring the protest of his aging joints. Up close, he could see the creature was severely malnourished. Its body seemed to be consuming itself, each movement a careful negotiation between survival and complete collapse. Exotic markings that might have been communication or simply biological patterns covered its skin, shifting like living watercolors. The old man's scientific training kicked in. He recognized distress, regardless of its origin. Whatever this creature was, it was alive. It was suffering, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. "You're safe now," Harold whispered, though he wasn't sure the being could understand. His hands, gentle from years of handling delicate plant specimens, reached out slowly. No sudden movements. No threat. The creature's large, iridescent eyes flickered open. They were unlike anything Harold had ever seen, pools of liquid metal that seemed to capture entire universes in their depth. Fear and hope danced together in those eyes, a silent language more powerful than words. A thin, almost translucent limb moved slightly, not to defend, but to reach out. A gesture of pure vulnerability that spoke volumes about the creature's condition. Harold realized he was looking at something extraordinary. Not a threat, not a scientific specimen, but a living being in desperate need of help. The first stars began to appear in the twilight sky, silent witnesses to an encounter that would change everything. The kitchen of Harold's farmhouse hummed with an unusual energy. Soft, amber light from the vintage pendant lamp cast a warm glow over the carefully arranged workspace. Harold had transformed his kitchen counter into a makeshift medical station, drawing from decades of scientific methodology and a lifetime of nurturing rare botanical specimens. The alien being lay wrapped in a soft blanket salvaged from his late wife's hope chest, a weathered quilt that had comforted generations. Its iridescent skin continued to shift colors, now matching the soft blues and greens of the kitchen's worn linoleum floor. Harold worked with the precision of a research scientist, carefully analyzing the creature's biological signals. His old medical scanner, a relic from his days as a research botanist, proved surprisingly useful. The device, designed to detect minute changes in plant cellular structures, now mapped an entirely different form of life. Holographic displays flickered with data that defied conventional understanding. Metabolic patterns unlike anything in terrestrial biology danced across the screen. "Fascinating," Harold muttered, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. The bean's respiratory system seemed to process energy differently. Each breath created microscopic crystalline structures that dissolved almost instantly, suggesting a metabolism that was part biological, part something entirely unknown. Harold recognized the signs of severe malnutrition, but the solution would require more than traditional nutrition. His kitchen became a laboratory of compassion. Glass beakers typically used for plant nutrient experiments now held carefully mixed solutions. Harold drew from his extensive knowledge of botanical nutrition, understanding that different organisms required precisely balanced sustenance. He ground rare minerals, mixed plant extracts, and created a concoction that might bridge the gap between alien biology and earthly nutrition. The first attempt at feeding was delicate. Harold approached with a small dropper, his movements slow and deliberate. The alien's large, mercury-like eyes tracked his every motion, not with fear, but with an intensity that suggested deep intelligence. "Let's see if we can help you," Harold spoke softly, his voice a comforting rumble that seemed to fill the kitchen's quiet spaces. The liquid he prepared was a complex mixture. Trace minerals from his botanical research, synthesized compounds that mimicked energy transmission at a cellular level, and a base of carefully processed plant extracts. It looked like nothing so much as a shimmering, slightly luminescent liquid that seemed to breathe with its own inner light. The first drop touched the alien's translucent skin, and something extraordinary happened. Microscopic tendrils, invisible to the naked eye, but clearly visible on Harold's medical scanner, began to absorb the liquid. They moved with purpose, analyzing, breaking down, and redistributing the nutrients with a precision that took Harold's breath away. The bean's skin rippled with colors, deep blues, soft greens, hints of silver, a visual representation of its internal processes. Hours passed. Harold maintained a constant vigil, adjusting the nutritional mixture, monitoring every minute change. His retirement had prepared him for this. Years of patience, of careful observation, of understanding that life was a delicate, complex system. As dawn began to break, painting the kitchen windows with soft golden light, the alien's condition stabilized. Its breathing became more regular, the wild fluctuations in its skin color settling into a more consistent pattern. Harold realized he was witnessing something unprecedented, the careful revival of a life form completely alien to Earth. His scientific mind raced with questions. Where did this being come from? What journey had brought it to his small farmhouse? The medical scanner continued to collect data, each reading more fascinating than the last. The bean moved slightly, and Harold noticed something he hadn't seen before, a subtle pattern on its skin. Not just a random shift of color, but something more deliberate. Like a language, like communication. "Who are you?" Harold whispered, knowing full well he might never receive a direct answer. Outside, the first songbirds began their morning chorus. Inside, two beings from vastly different worlds shared a moment of quiet understanding. one a retired researcher, the other a mysterious visitor from beyond the stars. The kitchen, with its worn surfaces and vintage equipment, had become something more than a room. It was a bridge between worlds, a place of unexpected connection. Communication proved to be Harold's greatest challenge and most fascinating puzzle. His study, a testament to a lifetime of scientific curiosity, became the primary workspace for this extraordinary endeavor. Bookshelves lined with botanical journals and research papers now shared space with an array of electronic devices, each carefully positioned to facilitate understanding. The old tablet computer, a relic from his late wife's collection, became their primary bridge. Harold had always been tech-savvy, maintaining his scientific edge well into retirement. He began with basic translation software, programming it to recognize patterns rather than expecting traditional language structures. The aliens' communication was nothing like human language. It was a complex symphony of color shifts, microscopic skin movements, and subtle energy fluctuations that the medical scanner barely captured. Harold approached the challenge like a complex botanical puzzle, patient, methodical, with an unwavering belief that understanding was possible. Days turned into weeks. Harold's kitchen table became a war room of communication, covered with diagrams, translation attempts, and carefully logged observations. He used everything in his scientific arsenal: pattern recognition software, linguistic analysis tools, and pure, unbridled human creativity. Slowly, fragments of understanding emerged. The being was female, Harold determined, not through traditional biological markers, but through subtle communication patterns that suggested social complexity. She had a name, a concept that translated roughly to seeker of forgotten paths, in a language that was part visual, part energetic transmission. Her story emerged in fragments, like a complex mosaic slowly taking shape. She was a researcher, part of a highly structured scientific expedition. Her civilization valued knowledge above all else, a society where individual worth was measured entirely by scientific contribution. The concept of compassion, of individual care, seemed to be entirely foreign to her. "Your actions are inefficient," she communicated one evening, her skin rippling with colors that suggested confusion. The translation software struggled, but Harold was beginning to understand the nuanced language of her existence. Harold smiled, a warm expression that seemed to perplex the alien even more. "Sometimes," he explained, carefully choosing his words, "efficiency isn't the most important thing." The concept was completely alien to her. Her entire understanding of existence was built around maximizing scientific output, minimizing individual variation, treating living beings as data points rather than individual entities. Her expedition had been exploring a remote sector of space, searching for rare astronomical phenomena. Something had gone wrong, a catastrophic event that she communicated through a series of color shifts and energy pulses that the medical scanner could barely interpret. Harold pieced together a story of isolation, of being deemed expendable by her own civilization. "You were left behind," Harold said softly, not as a question, but as a statement of understanding. The alien's skin shifted to a deep, sorrowful blue that seemed to fill the entire study with a sense of profound loss. Her communication suggested a journey of months, or perhaps years, spent drifting, searching for any form of assistance. The human concept of rescue was entirely foreign to her. In her civilization, a failed mission meant complete abandonment. Harold's botanical research had taught him patience. He had spent years coaxing rare plant species to bloom, understanding that life could be nurtured in the most unexpected circumstances. This was no different. Each day brought new revelations. The alien's understanding of human concepts grew, filtered through her scientific perspective. Emotions were data points to be analyzed. Compassion was an inefficient biological response that defied her logical understanding. "Why do you help me?" she would ask, her communication a complex dance of color and energy. Harold would simply smile, a gesture that seemed to confuse her more with each repetition. As autumn deepened and winter approached, something extraordinary began to happen. The line between researcher and subject, between human and alien, started to blur. Communication became less about translation and more about understanding. The study became a world between worlds, a place where two entirely different forms of intelligence began to learn from each other, one careful moment at a time. Winter settled over the farm with a quiet intensity. Frost painted intricate patterns on the windows, while inside, a transformation was taking place that defied conventional understanding. The aliens' capabilities began to unfold like a complex, living mathematics. Harold's study transformed into a laboratory of discovery. Mathematical equations would spontaneously form in the air around her, not projected, not written, but seemingly manifested through pure thought. Complex quantum calculations that would take teams of human mathematicians months to solve appeared and dissolved within moments, leaving behind only a faint shimmer of energy. "Fascinating," Harold would murmur, his scientific curiosity burning as brightly as ever. The alien's cognitive abilities went far beyond simple computation. She could simultaneously process multiple complex problem sets, her mind working like a living supercomputer. Yet, for all her intellectual brilliance, she struggled with the most basic human emotional concepts. Harold began to teach her about more than just survival. He introduced her to the concept of creativity, something entirely foreign to her highly structured scientific civilization. His collection of watercolor paints, untouched since his wife's passing, became an unexpected tool of communication. The first painting was a revelation. Where a human might create art with intention and emotion, she approached the canvas like a complex mathematical problem. Each brushstroke was a calculated decision, a precise application of color theory, pigment dynamics, and spatial relationships. The result was simultaneously breathtaking and slightly unsettling, a perfect representation of mathematical precision that somehow captured something beyond pure logic. "Art is not just about accuracy," Harold explained, watching her process. "It's about expression, about feeling." The concept seemed to short-circuit her understanding. Feelings, to her civilization, were nothing more than biochemical responses to be measured and categorized. The idea of art as emotional expression was as alien to her as her biology was to Harold. Their daily interactions became a delicate dance of mutual learning. Harold shared stories of his life, his years of botanical research, his late wife's passion for gardening, the quiet rhythms of farm life. She would listen, her skin shifting in patterns that suggested intense processing. One particularly cold afternoon, Harold noticed something extraordinary. While explaining the concept of family, he saw her skin begin to mimic the emotional landscape of his story. When he spoke of loss, she shifted to muted grays. During moments of joy, vibrant yellows and greens would emerge. She was learning to feel by first understanding how feelings might look. Her own story began to emerge in fragments. Her civilization was a network of scientific outposts, where individual worth was measured solely by research output. Emotional connections were considered inefficient, almost a form of biological malfunction. She had been part of a deep space research mission, cataloging astronomical phenomena in the most remote sectors of space. "What happened to your team?" Harold asked one evening, watching her skin shimmer with complex emotional patterns. The response was a burst of visual communication that spoke of catastrophic system failures, of being deemed non-essential, of a calculated decision to sacrifice one for the potential salvation of mission data. Harold understood then the true depth of her isolation. She wasn't just a refugee from another world. She was a being who had been systematically devalued by her own civilization. Their days developed a rhythm. Mornings were for scientific exploration, with Harold teaching her about Earth's ecosystems. Afternoons became lessons in human complexity, art, emotion, the intricate social dynamics that defy pure logical analysis. As winter deepened, something remarkable happened. The alien began to understand not just the mechanics of human experience, but its essence. Her computational mind started to recognize that some problems couldn't be solved through pure logic, that sometimes Understanding was more important than being right. The farm became a crucible of transformation. Two beings from worlds apart, learning the most fundamental lesson of existence. Connection transcends understanding. The first sign of trouble came with a vibration, so subtle that only Harold's finely tuned scientific instruments could detect it. It was a frequency that didn't belong, a harmonic dissonance that spoke of technological intervention far beyond human capabilities. Spring had begun to bloom across the farm. Delicate green shoots pushed through the earth, and the apple trees started to bud with promise. Inside the farmhouse, the alien had become more than just a visitor. She had become a presence, complex, evolving, challenging every preconception of intelligence. Harold's old radio crackled to life, not with local broadcasts, but with a signal that seemed to slice through conventional communication bands. Mathematical patterns danced across its display, a language both familiar and utterly foreign. "They'd found me," the alien communicated, her skin shifting to a pattern of deep, anxious blues and grays. The retrieval team arrived with a precision that defied human understanding. 3 sleek vessels descended from the sky, their designs so advanced they seemed to bend light around themselves. No sound, no disturbance of the surrounding air, just pure, calculated efficiency. Local farmers gathering for their monthly meeting at the community center became an unexpected line of defense. Harold had become a fixture in the small community, respected, known for his decades of scientific research and quiet kindness. When the strange vessels appeared, something extraordinary happened. Old Pete Johnson, a Vietnam veteran who hadn't spoken to anyone outside farm business in years, was the first to speak. "Something's not right," he muttered, setting down his coffee mug. Local ranchers, farmers, mechanics, people who lived by their own code of community, began to mobilize. They didn't understand the full picture, but they understood one thing: Harold was one of their own. The alien watched in complete bewilderment. Her civilization knew nothing of this spontaneous collective action, this instinctive protection of community. Calculations couldn't explain the complex web of human connection that was forming. 3 representatives from the retrieval team approached the farm. They were humanoid, but only in the loosest sense, moving with a mechanical precision that suggested more machine than living being. They demanded the return of their research subject. Harold stood on the porch, a retired scientist facing down technology centuries beyond human understanding. His hands, which had carefully nurtured rare plant species, now gripped an old walking stick with unexpected determination. "She's not going anywhere," Harold said simply. The retrieval team's communication was a burst of pure mathematical precision. They outlined the alien's status: a research asset, a cataloging unit, a piece of scientific equipment to be retrieved and potentially recycled. The alien's skin began to shift, translating their communication for Harold. It was a language of pure data, of calculated efficiency. In their civilization, individual life held no more value than a spare computer component. Local farmers began to arrive, not with weapons, not with threats, just a quiet, immovable presence. Trucks parked along the road. People stood shoulder to shoulder, a human barrier that defied technological superiority. "This isn't how your calculations work," Harold said softly to the retrieval team. "Humans aren't just data points." The most remarkable transformation happened in that moment. The alien, who had spent her entire existence understanding the world through pure calculation, began to understand something fundamental about human existence: collective action, community, protection of the vulnerable. Her skin began to shift, no longer just translating, but communicating, not with the precise mathematical language of her civilization, but with something more nuanced, something that spoke of connection, of individual worth. The retrieval team hesitated. Their advanced sensors detected something they couldn't quantify, something that defied their most sophisticated calculations: human unpredictability. As the standoff continued, the farm became more than a location. It became a bridge between worlds, a place where different forms of intelligence would be forced to understand each other in ways neither could predict. The standoff stretched into hours, a silent battle of wills that defied conventional understanding. Local law enforcement arrived, not to intervene, but to stand alongside the community. Sheriff Marcus Rodriguez, a man known for his measured approach, found himself in the most unprecedented situation of his career. "We don't know what's happening," he radioed to the county dispatch, "but we're not leaving." The retrieval team's vessels created a perfect geometric formation above the farm. Technology so advanced it appeared almost like living mathematics, each movement calculated to the most minute precision. Yet they remained stationary, their sensors unable to process the complex human dynamic unfolding below. Inside the farmhouse, Harold and the alien observed the developing situation with entirely different perspectives. His weathered hands adjusted an old radio, attempting to understand the sophisticated communication signals surrounding them. She watched with skin that shifted between analytical blues and emotional greens, processing information in ways no human could comprehend. "Your civilization cannot understand this," Harold explained, pointing to the gathered community. "This is not about logic. This is about connection." The alien's response was a cascade of visual communication. Mathematical models attempted to quantify the human behavior, breaking down each individual's motivation, mapping the complex social network. But numbers could not capture the essence of what was happening. Local farmers brought supplies: thermoses of coffee, sandwiches, blankets. The retrieval team's sensors registered this activity, but could not interpret its significance. Why would individuals expend energy protecting a non-essential entity? Old Pete Johnson, who hadn't spoken more than 10 words to anyone in years, began telling stories. Stories of community, of standing together, of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. His weathered truck became a makeshift gathering point, its radio playing soft country music that seemed to irritate the alien technology. The retrieval team made multiple communication attempts, mathematical probes that sought to categorize, to reduce the situation to pure data. Each attempt was absorbed and transformed by the human collective, a living system that defied technological analysis. Sheriff Rodriguez approached one of the retrieval team representatives. No words were exchanged, but a message was clearly communicated. "We are not moving. We are united." The alien began to understand something profound. Her civilization valued individual members only through their scientific output. Here, value was measured differently, by compassion, by connection, by a willingness to stand together for something larger than individual survival. Her skin began to translate the human experience into a language of light and color. Each person's motivation became a complex mathematical equation that could not be solved through traditional computation. Hope, empathy, community. These were variables her original programming could not calculate. Harold watched the transformation with scientific fascination. Years of botanical research had taught him that life always found a way to adapt, to grow beyond expected parameters. This was evolution in its most profound form, not of biology, but of understanding. The retrieval team's technology began to show signs of computational stress. Their advanced systems, designed to analyze and categorize, were encountering a scenario that defied their most sophisticated algorithms. Human unpredictability was a variable they could not integrate. As evening approached, the community's resolve remained unbroken. Pickup trucks formed a protective circle around the farm. Children were sent home, but adults remained. Food was shared. Stories were told. The alien observed a social network more complex than any galactic communication system she had ever encountered. "We protect our own," Pete Johnson mumbled, a statement that seemed to resonate across the gathered group. The retrieval team's vessels began to show minute fluctuations, not of movement, but of computational uncertainty. For the first time in their recorded history, they were encountering a scenario that could not be resolved through pure calculation. Sunset painted the farm in hues of orange and purple. The standoff continued, a testament to human resilience, to the power of community, to a form of intelligence that transcended technological superiority. The night was coming, and nothing was going to be the same again. Midnight brought an unexpected transformation. The farm, bathed in moonlight, became a crucible of communication unlike anything in recorded human or alien history. Harold's study, once a quiet sanctuary of botanical research, now hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. The alien began to communicate, not through the retrieval team's mathematical precision, but through a language she was only now discovering. Her skin became a living canvas, translating the complex social dynamics she had observed into a form of communication that both transcended and challenged her original programming. "Your civilization measures worth incorrectly," she transmitted, her skin rippling with colors that spoke of mathematical complexity and emotional depth. "Individual potential cannot be calculated by output alone." Harold listened, his scientific mind working to interpret the nuanced communication. Years of research had taught him that the most profound discoveries often came from unexpected sources. The retrieval team's representatives attempted to interrupt their communication a burst of pure mathematical logic. But something had changed. The alien was no longer simply a research subject. She had become something more, a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of intelligence. Her revelations began to pour out. The deep space research mission was not what it appeared. Her civilization had been exploring regions of space that suggested fundamental flaws in their understanding of existence. Entire research networks were built on computational models that failed to account for the most basic elements of adaptive intelligence. Compassion is not inefficient. She communicated, her skin creating visual representations of complex social networks. It is the most advanced form of problem-solving. Outside, the local community remained vigilant. Sheriff Rodriguez coordinated with state officials, creating a protective barrier that confused the retrieval team's sophisticated sensors. Military and scientific representatives began to arrive, drawn by reports of an unprecedented encounter. Harold's old radio collection became an unexpected communication hub. Vintage equipment, modified with the aliens' advanced technological understanding, began to pick up signals from beyond conventional communication bands. Scientific communities around the world started to take notice. The retrieval team's computational systems began to show signs of profound stress. Their algorithms, designed to categorize and control, encountered a scenario that defied every established protocol. Human collective action, the aliens' evolving communication, the complex social dynamics. These were variables that could not be easily quantified. "Your mission is fundamentally flawed," the alien communicated to her own retrieval team. Her skin created intricate visual representations of their civilization's systemic failures. Entire research networks, built on the premise of pure computational efficiency, were revealed to be critically limited. Harold watched in scientific amazement. This was more than first contact. This was a fundamental challenge to two different forms of intelligence. The local community's actions became a case study in adaptive intelligence. Farmers, mechanics, veterans, each brought unique problem-solving skills that challenged the retrieval team's understanding of collective action. Old Pete Johnson's war stories, shared around makeshift campfires, became as important as any technological communication. As dawn approached, the farm transformed. What had begun as a potential conflict became something entirely different. A negotiation, a meeting of minds that transcended technological barriers. Scientific representatives from around the world began to arrive, not with weapons or containment protocols, but with curiosity. With an understanding that this was more than a first contact scenario. This was an opportunity to redefine intelligence itself. The alien's communication reached a crescendo. Her skin became a living display of the complex interconnectedness she had learned. Computational models dissolved, replaced by a more nuanced understanding of existence. Individual worth, community, compassion. "We were wrong," she communicated to her retrieval team. The message was clear, complex, undeniable. Harold smiled. A lifetime of scientific research had taught him that the most profound discoveries often came from the most unexpected places: a farm, a community, an understanding that transcended technological barriers. The night was ending, but something entirely new was just beginning. 5 years passed. The small farm became something more than a simple homestead. It transformed into a beacon of interstellar understanding. Harold's study had changed dramatically. Scientific equipment from around the world now shared space with the aliens' intricate communication devices. Holographic displays danced with complex mathematical models that challenged every known scientific paradigm. The walls, once covered with botanical research notes, now displayed a blend of human and alien knowledge. She had a name now. Not a technical designation, but a name given by the community: Luna, chosen for her ability to shift and adapt like moonlight. Harold had become more than a caretaker. He was a mentor, a bridge between two fundamentally different forms of understanding. The retrieval team's arrival had sparked a revolution in scientific thinking. Luna's revelations about her civilization's computational limitations became a turning point for both human and alien research communities. Universities worldwide began developing new interdisciplinary programs that merged emotional intelligence with advanced computational theory. On this particular autumn morning, Luna sat beside Harold on the farmhouse porch. Her skin shifted with subtle colors, a language now partially understood by the scientific community. They were reviewing final drafts of a groundbreaking research paper that would reshape understanding of intelligence across multiple species. Compassion, Harold explained, pointing to a section of the document, is not a weakness. It's the most advanced form of problem-solving. Luna's skin rippled with colors that suggested deep agreement. Her transformation was complete. No longer a research subject, she had become a diplomat, a scientist, a bridge between civilizations. The local community had been integral to her development. Farmers who once viewed her with suspicion now treated her as one of their own. Old Pete Johnson had become her unofficial mentor in human social dynamics, sharing stories of community and resilience that no computational model could capture. Scientific delegations continued to visit the farm. International research teams, alien diplomatic envoys, government representatives, all came to understand the profound transformation that had occurred in this quiet corner of the world. Luna's research had revealed fundamental flaws in her original civilization's understanding of intelligence. Computational efficiency, they had discovered, was not the highest form of problem-solving. Adaptability, compassion, collective action, these were the true markers of advanced intelligence. Harold's health was declining, but his spirit remained vibrant. He had become the unexpected hero of the most significant first contact in human history, not through military might or technological superiority, but through simple, profound compassion. "We've only begun to understand," Luna communicated, her skin creating complex visual representations of their joint research. Holographic displays flickered with possibilities, new forms of communication, advanced problem-solving techniques that merged emotional and computational intelligence. The farm had become more than a location. It was a living laboratory of interstellar understanding. Local schools now included specialized programs exploring interspecies communication. Luna worked with educators, developing curricula that challenged traditional understanding of intelligence and connection. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the apple orchard, Harold reflected on the journey. A chance encounter on a cold autumn night had transformed everything. A starving alien girl, an old man's compassion, a community that chose understanding over fear. Luna's skin shifted to a soft, warm color, a visual representation of gratitude that transcended language. She had learned more than scientific knowledge. She had learned what it meant to be part of something larger than herself. "Thank you," she communicated, a message that carried the weight of entire civilizations. Harold simply smiled. Some translations needed no words. The farm continued to stand, a testament to the most powerful force in the universe, not technology, not computation, but connection. As darkness fell, the first stars appeared, distant, mysterious, full of infinite possibilities.